Welcome to Season 10 of FNRad Snowboarding, the podcast where I interview important snowboarders. Please join the FNRad Patreon. It's the best place to follow the show, and there are rad perks. It's totally free, or you can choose one of FNRad's support tiers to directly fund production of the show. Join legendary listeners like Roy Orn Borseth, Jamie Shaw, Heinrich Donnerberg, Chris Green, Hayden Pocock, Anthony Torreson, Kyle C., Carl Montoya, Scott Grabke, and so many others. Thank you to everyone who's made it possible for me to quit my job and follow my heart. Season 10 is presented by Flojoy Water, Chris Roach's family business. Refresh your style with Flojoy artisanal mountain water. Pure water, pure stoke. And essential toothpaste tabs. Earth-friendly, adventure-ready toothpaste. Clean ingredients, supported by science. Wired Snowboards factory in Vancouver builds high-quality custom snowboards for about the same price as other brands' regular boards. I've created several one-of-a-kind wired customs, including a Chase 162 that's seen hundreds of my best powder days. Get yourself a game-changing snowboard and join the Wired team with Devin Walsh, Sasha Daly, and many others. Wired Snowboards. For more information, go to wiredsnowboards.com. Fixed bindings are my go-to for all my snowboards because they're comfortable, durable, and look rad. Fix makes bindings I want to ride. Simple, lightweight, and dependable, made from the best materials, using the most environmentally friendly production processes possible. They offer lifetime warranty on bases and buckles. If you're looking for affordable performance bindings in the perfect color to match your fit, go to fixbindingco.com or grab them at your local retailer. Bluebird Coffee Tuning and Rentals in Squamish is the coolest new stop on your way to Whistler. Bluebird offers quality board tunes using state-of-the-art equipment, premium rentals for every level of rider with demos of Burton step-ons, and award-winning coffee and incredible smoothies. For a blend of expert knowledge, convenience, and lots of charm, stop by Bluebird in Squamish and get your board tuned at the newest mandatory stop on your way to Whistler. Rip Curl's anti-series outerwear is engineered to keep you warm, dry, and comfortable no matter where your adventure takes you. Ridden by pros like Chris Rasman, Rip Curl is built to perform in any mountain conditions all over the world. The Rip Curl Planet program means they create outerwear with recycled materials and sustainable practices, so stay protected, stay warm, and join Rip Curl in protecting the planet. Shop the Anti-Series today at ripcurl.com and authorized dealers. Pro Standard makes the grill mount the best mount for your Insta360 GoPro or DJI camera. It's a heat moldable mouth mount, tripod, hand grip, hook mount, bottle mount, wall mount, clamp mount, glove mount, and shoe mount, designed by snowboard legend Ken Achenbach to get you the perfect angle for snowboarding, surfing, biking, and it'll replace 90% of your other mounts. Use code FNRAD to get 20 off your first order at prostandard.com. Support also comes from our friends at the Boardroom Snowboard Shop. Check out boardroomshop.com and use code FNRAD10 for 10% off regular priced items and FNRAD5 for 5% off sale items. 1910, the collaborative artworks of Jamie, Lynn, and Scof. FNRAD20 saves you 20% off at 1910.com. New Greens, the superfood green drink sourced from American farms. Use code FNRAD for 20% off at newgreens.com. I want to thank DeKine Snowboard outerwear, travel bags, and backpacks, and our friends at Mount Seymour, Grouse Mountain, and Cypress Mountain for their support. Jamie Lynn is the snowboarder whose powerful style marked the changing of the guards from the early days of pointy boards and wavy arm no grabs to twin tips with cowboy stances, powerful drifting frontside spins off the toes, and switch airs as big and smooth as regular airs. Jamie's influence is still strong throughout the snowboarding community, with his 30th pro model on LibTech, his collaboration with Scof bringing art to the community through 1910, and his frequent appearances in Boldface Snowcats, stoking out guests with his timeless style. There's only one Jamie Lynn, and I was absolutely humbled to be invited to his Washington compound for an FNRad interview before an amazing dinner with his family.
I had a fucking loud drummer, and I never wore earplugs at all.
Right.
And then standing in front of his drum kit, playing, and our amp volumes had to come up. And once those amp volumes came up and his loud snare and fucking crash cymbal behind me and a kick drum, after playing, I just noticed I had tinnitus, where it was like a constant ringing in my ears. And it's not gone away, and it's only probably progressively got worse.
Have you done any like hearing aids, shit like that?
I tried, yeah. I've had like a couple of different. I just can't hold on to them, you know. Yeah. I had some killer ones, and then I fucking jumped in the water in Hawaii and went surfing with them in, and then all of a sudden I hear the and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm fucking, you know, they're like $1,000 fucking hearing aids. Fuck. They got fucked up.
Yeah.
And then I got the cheap ones, like the $100 ones, and it just seemed like it was more harm than good. It was just so like blown out speaker in my ear. It never really. Deanie's dad is such a quiet talker. Every time I go hang out with him in Abbotsford, I'm just like, what are you saying? What, you know, like, and I want to hear his stories, but he just whispers, and I'm like, I can't fucking hear shit.
Oh, no.
And then it's just like a constant ringing. It just sounds like a warm summer night with the crickets. Still
now?
It's cicadas.
Really?
Yeah, it's just constant.
Constant.
You know, I went to Skull Candy recently when I was out in Utah, and they have this room that's supposed to be like the most soundproof room in existence to do all their testing for their headphone shit. And they're like, it was part of like the tour, like, hey, let's go check out the soundproof room. And I went in there and I was like, fuck, it's bad. Like it's so loud. That's all I could hear was just constant ringing, and I couldn't hear the silence, you know, like, because they're like, yeah, you can hear a fucking pin drop, and I couldn't hear shit. Damn. All I could hear was my ears ringing bad.
How long have you and Deanie been together? A couple of years, 3 years,
4 or 5 years now, 4 years. Like, yeah. You know, like Thalo's 2.5. You know, when she was working up at Baldface, I would always be hanging out with her, and she was bartending or part of the crew up there. And that was probably in, you know, if it's 24 now, I would say like 2019, 20 maybe.
Yeah, right.
When we really started to spend a lot of time together.
The pandemic thing.
Yeah, like probably a year before the pandemic, 2020. So and probably like 18, 19.
Your hearing was starting to go then?
It was already, it was shot. Like I was playing music in like 2008, 2009. So it's been like that for 12, 15 years.
Fuck, dude. Yeah, that's nuts. Because I wouldn't have known anything except Deanie said something when we were down in Denver. Oh, he doesn't hear anything.
Yeah.
And then,
well, I mean, I would notice like a lot of people would be like, hey, Jamie, what's going on? And I wouldn't hear them, and I would just like, you know, I wouldn't acknowledge someone that's trying to get my attention.
Yeah.
And then Deanie would be like, hey, like, did you hear so-and-so trying to get a hold of you? And I'd be like, who? You know, and oh, fuck, you know, like, I don't want to come across as being a cold or a dick to people just because I wasn't conscious of their acknowledgement, you know. So
yeah, because I think down there maybe the good hearing aids had just gone into the drink. She's like, he had some, but now we're back at it.
I went through like a couple like $100 pairs, and they just suck. And so I mean, and I think there might be reversible treatment that you can get now. I don't know what it is, if it's an implant or something, but I've just kind of gotten used to the constant ringing, some people it drives crazy, you know, like it's something that could really start messing with your mental health sometimes. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just try to accept it as a daily. It's just how it is.
Damn.
But I want to go in and get like a hearing test, because you got those apps now on their iPhone where you could do like, you can put it in headphones and it goes through like the sounds and tones.
Yeah.
And then always comes back like, yes, you have like severe hearing loss. And and it's certain tones, you know, like if someone is like speaking directly and has a certain tone, but once they start getting quiet and like whispering like that, I'm just like, fuck, I have to tell them, like, dude, I have no idea what you're saying. And I'll start creeping closer and closer and closer to them, like, oh, well, you know, and getting up in their space where it makes it uncomfortable for them. And it's uncomfortable for me, but it's the only way that I can actually connect with the conversation sometimes.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Chaos. Well, we're out here at your ranch, which is the sounds of nature out here are the real deal. It's awesome. This is a really beautiful spot. And you've got it set up in a really, really amazing way. There's enough stuff here for, you know, the rest of your life to be working on projects, whether it's cars, guns, the house, the yard, all this stuff. How long have you had this set up? You've had it for a while.
It's 28, 29 years. I got it in 96.
Damn.
And, 96, I was 2 years into the height of, LibTech board sales were healthy. The industry in general was healthy. Sponsors were very, gracious and sharing that wealth during that time. And it was one of the smartest investments I think I could have done with the income that I had at the time. I got it. I was looking for property someplace close to where I grew up in Auburn, in Washington State, and I came out here. My little brother had a friend in school that had a graduation party, and they had the party here.
Oh, no way.
And this was her grandfather's property at the time that he let the kids have a graduation party. So I came out here for a night, and I don't think I was looking to buy, but I just acknowledged, like, wow, this is a really beautiful piece. And I think it was 2 years later when I was looking, it was offered on the market. Was able to get into it fairly cheap considering what the property value of the area is now. And then just over the last 30 years, just started filling it with crap. If it was cars that I collected along my journeys and travels, a fairly large collection, but it was stuff that I had acquired for essentially under $5,000 for each car that I have. But now, they're marquee cars that have gained quite a bit in interest over the years. And
I like that there's Jason Jesse out there. There's like
Jason Jesse helped me find that 60 DeSoto, and it was a buddy of his in Salinas or Watsonville, and
sick.
It was a couple $1,000, it was really, and I think it ran and drove, and there's not a whole lot of 60 DeSotos out there. I think they stopped production for DeSoto in 62. But it's a beautiful car that showcases the best of that styling characteristics of the 1960s. Beautiful fins, beautiful lines. It's a Chrysler product, so it comes with like a Chrysler drivetrain. It's got cool push-button transmission.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's whoever had it before me was kind of a hot rodder in Watsonville, and he had put he put a toggle switch on the dash that when you flip this toggle, it shut the distributor ignition from the spark plugs in the motor to two spark plugs that were mounted in the dual exhaust. So when it killed the ignition to the engine, it just pumped raw gas out the exhaust, and the spark plugs would ignite that raw gas and shoot like a 4 or 5 foot flame out the exhaust.
Oh, come on.
I always thought that was a pretty nice touch.
That's super sick. And then the Joey McGuire car is also.
It's a 1970 Roadrunner. that was used as kind of like a mechanics school project for Joey McGuire and Terry Parker. I'm not sure if it was Terry that owned it at the time, but he hit me up and he's like, hey, I need to sell this car. Are you interested? And I was like, it's a fucking amazing car. Like the price was affordable at the time, which was 3 times as much as what I was used to buying, but I knew that the car warranted that in value. I knew who had worked on it. I knew they took the time to, replace every panel that needed to be replaced in a way that they actually drilled out the spot welds and replaced perfect sheet metal, no body work or anything. And it's a 440. It's a 383 car, 383 cubic inch car originally, and when they rebuilt it, they rebuilt a 446 pack clone, which is a really like upper end tier of what Mopar offered for motor combinations, but 440 cubic inches with 3 two-barrel carburetors is what the 446 stands for. It's a 4-speed car, which that combination, even as a clone, it's a really amazing car. And one of my, prized cars in the collection that I'm really stoked and thankful that I was offered it back in the 90s, and things were somewhat affordable. But now looking at what cars are going for with all the auctions, the Barrett Jackson stuff, you see those cars come up, and the originals are like, sometimes in the $200,000-$300,000 range.
God damn. Unreal.
So tell me about this new water that we're drinking here. It's a Flojoy.
Yeah, so they bottle this at the source. So this is Artesian mountain water, which means it bubbles up from the ground. It's actually really delicious. And it's from Donner Summit.
This came from Roach and his family.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Roach.
Mm-hmm.
Wicked.
And they've really got some sick momentum. So Mark Kowalchuk did the art. And he's done Roach's graphics for the last couple of years with Academy. It's Academy. He's got an Academy board with that's made out of the Never Summer Factory. Badass boards, rad graphics. So the Tree Man graphic, this guy has been on Roach's board for a while. We'll have to have him talk about where that came from. But they're not just doing spring water. They're also going to do sparkling. Yeah. He's selling it around Grass Valley. He's got Ryder out there driving around cases of Flojoy to like several markets in their spot. And so we're bringing it up into Canada. We may wind up getting Whistler water put in the cans, just because shipping water from Donner to Canada it's a task, especially financially. Like just moving water from one place to the other is expensive now. Shipping's gone through the roof, as I'm sure you know from 1910 and your meetings this
import duties and
crazy.
Taxes for goods produced outside of Canada, getting them up into Canada it's a process.
It's a process for sure.
And there's ways to do it, and we didn't choose those ways in the first year, and I just so thankful that the retailers that have brought us in have some patience with us for us to set up our import. I think it's a non-resident importer. NRI is who is now
those
choosing
guys are
our
awesome.
import duties and stuff, so we can ship bulk as like cost to produce instead of the wholesale cost. There's like ways to do it, but
those guys are smart. When I worked at Ride in 2000, their warehouse was at the Ride Canada headquarters, and I met the guys that were building it up, and their vision is crazy. I mean, if you think about that was 2000, they had like automated bin locations, like the kind of things that Amazon's doing now. They were doing that shit 25 years ago, so they're really dialed in, which is good. Yeah. And it works for you guys, and it works for the retailers. It's a pretty good way to do it. It cuts down some of that crazy shipping.
It's awesome. Starting a company has got its like learning curves, but I just, if I could say thank you for the people that have supported us in the early first year inception. We're getting our shit together. Thank you for your patience.
I think it's safe to say, like, 1910 is one of a handful of exciting companies right now. Because, like, you've already mentioned the 90s, and I'd love to talk a bit about, like, what it was like through those mid to late 90s when, you know, snowboarding was kind of growing exponentially every year. Like, the beginning of the 90s, there really wasn't, it didn't exist yet. So, like, to tell someone, oh, I'm a pro snowboarder, like, they didn't even know what that was. I can remember still having to explain, okay, snowboarding is like surfing on the snow. Yeah, it's kind of like skiing. Yeah, we use the ski lifts. Like, and 3 or 4 years later, it was just like the hottest, most talked about shit, right? Like, Ride goes public in 95, I think. That's world news. Now people are thinking, oh, shit, we can get rich off this thing, and by 98 it's in the Olympics. It's crazy. So, you know, and now it's not that. Now we've gone full maturity on some of these companies, have either gotten bought by bigger companies or have gotten to the point where their systems are so set in place that, I don't know, I feel like it feels now like the team rider has a much smaller part in the broad scheme of things. Like in the 90s, your sponsors like are asking you for feedback, asking you for art, asking you for like design input. Like you're not just a rider, you're actually a designer. Now there's a team of designers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, LibTech was a good example of that. LibTech never did any print ads. You know, they just refused to pay into that market of like paying a magazine to showcase their team riders and get content out of their team riders to help market their product. They never did that, but we were their marketing agency. We were their, you know, we would go out and just ride with photographers that was doing content and editorials and photos and videos too, without me knowing that there was a full like business to that whole setup, you know. Like then the older I got, the more that I realized like, oh shit, well now I know why certain riders are in certain magazines or in certain videos, is because those companies were major sponsors to the video projects.
Right.
And they needed those riders in there to pay to, you know, get what the companies paid for.
Totally.
I never knew that. I never, like, it wasn't something that was part of my understanding of business within the industry. I thought it was just like, fuck, if you rode and you ripped and you were in the audience of these people that were documenting it, it just was a natural relationship that went hand in hand with one another. Years later, I realized that wasn't the case. So I always thought, you know, I was like, why aren't you guys helping us promote us as riders? Because LibTech doesn't advertise. And like, if it would be so much easier if you guys didn't advertise. But then later on, decades later, I realized, oh, fuck, that was kind of cool.
Super cool.
They didn't need that. And they didn't buy into that whole marketing business stuff that other companies had to pay. Yeah, it was a lot more real for them to do it the way they did it, because if it was just more natural, like, fuck, if the riders ripped it, let the riding speak for itself, and it put the rider on that level where, you know, like, I'm sure later on they got on board with that more so than they did in the beginning. But I just always thought, like, fuck, we're in like Fall Line Films, we're in MacDog Productions, we're in Standard Film Projects, but you don't see our name on the video box.
Right,
you know,
right,
you don't see LibTech as like a title, a headline sponsor, but you had me, Dave Lee, Todd Slosher, Joe McGuire, Barrett Christie, all these writers, you know, like that were marquee writers in these film projects without behind the scenes paying for their place.
I see that not coming back, but I've seen that process from, you know, like a guy buys a camera, he wants to be a photographer, and so now he's going to shoot with people that have on gear that he's going to go back to the company and say, hey, do you want to buy this photo of your rider? Do you want to buy that photo? So like what you're describing is the early days of MacDog, where, you know, maybe he's Mambo Sock or someone is just like, hey, put it in your movie, but they're not saying make sure everybody's wearing these. They're just, and then MacDog's thinking, okay, well, Noah's riding for them, so make sure that he's riding his Mambo Sock just to make you know, like, but he would maybe put you guys all in the movie and then go to LibTech and say, okay, for next year, you should be a title sponsor of this movie, right? But then I can't imagine at some point him saying, no, Jamie, your sponsor's not paying.
Yeah. I didn't lose any opportunity really because of that, you know, them not buying into that pay to play type of a situation.
Yeah, Jay Brown talked about that too, because Jason Brown was starting Capita out of that same sort of, well, art-based, fun team. Like he wasn't like, we need to get the like most winning team. He was like, let's be a crew. And you see that in the early Capita shit. They're doing art, they're hanging out, and he was fighting like, let's not buy ads. They need us in their magazines. We're the color. We're the excitement. And I mean, it was like a strategy that really, really worked.
Like bringing the culture and the lifestyle into it with just like doing what you love and loving what you do. It's a simple philosophy, but there's so much strength in that asset of simply like building into the culture, you know. And I don't know. I think, you know, it's one thing to start a business and a brand, but it's another thing just want to support the culture of everything. And like, you know, like with 1910, we might make clothing, we might do art, and we might do this and that, but really it's just kind of building into our community and collaborating with other like-minded individuals that can help bolster that and support that cause of just like, hey, we love to do what we do and we want to have fun and we want to continue to do this. How could we set these things up to where we can continue doing it and keep it positive and fun and like just and creative? You know, I think the creative aspect is a huge target point for us. Like no matter what we're doing, it's like you know, you can be creative in so many different ways, either with snowboarding and recreation or with an arts and crafts direction, you know. And I think that's what's really important, is just developing and nurturing the culture of what we do, because so much of that's becoming lost in the mainstream corporate business models that you see with companies these days. It just kills the spirit and it kills the soul.
Yeah, we had such a great community, and it was growing every year. So if you were, you know, like everybody had growth. The shops had growth, the brands had growth. So there was like and then there was this kind of speculation, this influx of money where it's like, hey, it doubled last year, doubled the year before that, double. Like when it finally got to the point where there wasn't a giant boom year, I don't even know where that was. I know the crash of 2008 was really hard for a lot of people, but I was never paying attention to the business side because it was boring. Like, think about what you were just saying with MacDog. Like, I'm sure you guys aren't going on trips and then he's talking about how much money he's trying to make from these videos. You guys are talking about spots, snow, and then like, how do we film this to make this look great? Like, you're focusing on the act. Most of it is the snowboarding thing, right?
Yeah,
as
a natural.
Yeah, as opposed to like a business transaction where I've heard some podcasts of like more modern snowboarder guys, like pros from, you know, Man Boys or whatever, talking about, you know, I think Jody Wozniak talked about like just getting thrown into a crew because you're on a brand. And now all of a sudden you're just on a trip that's kind of, you know, and I'm paraphrasing and butchering it, but like it's like a money-based trip you're on. You're trying to get assets, and there, you know, could even be components of it where it's like numbers of likes, numbers of followers, like that kind of thing, where you're like, that just didn't exist.
Yeah.
MacDog took care of that, right? Like his distribution was your exposure.
It was a behind the scenes, you know, all that business stuff was done off season, off site, behind closed doors. It was so natural for us just to be doing what we were doing and having him be doing what he was doing, like two different crafts joining forces to come out with this incredible project at the end of the year. Like, he facilitated the venue and the opportunity. We had fun in that venue and that opportunity with the people, whoever the dynamic was, with the Tahoe guys or guys from the Northwest, or, you know, Jason Brown and those guys from maybe Utah or the peripheral. Didn't really matter where you came from when you got together on that trip. That was the crew. It wasn't like it wasn't contrived at all. It was like just natural.
Yeah.
It's a natural gathering and spontaneous combustion. And I think that was really awesome to have those guys capturing that spontaneity, because what came out of it was something that was true, and it was real, and it was grounded, but it was groundbreaking at the same time. You know, like we were doing things that never been done before.
Yeah.
In places that we'd never done it before, you know, and having those factors be a part of a certain time in snowboarding was truly special. And people have been trying to reach those marks that were set decades ago, and they can touch on them, but it's just hard to replicate. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different time completely. I just saw, I forget which film it's in, the Freestyle moment with Jamie Lynn. That was that the Sully super pipe with the bar and everything?
Yeah.
What a fucking cool idea, first of all. Second of all, the crew that rode that, just, it was international royalty for snowboarding. What was that like? It
was wild. I mean, I know there was other people involved, but the ones that, it was like, you know, to get Brushy, Palmer, and myself, you know, together in one place, doing things in a half pipe up on, you know, the glacier up at Blackcomb in the summer, integrating rails into a half pipe setting. You've never seen that before. Like, I don't know who came up with that idea, but it was something that sparked off this whole generational genre of like, that's a possibility now. We could put a rail on the deck of a half pipe and board slide this. Like, holy crap, you know, like what, you know, who came up with that? I have no idea. But you have, you know, Sean Sullivan and Daniel Pendergrass shooting. And again, it was like, we were just going up. I don't even, you know, I think we were up there anyway, and they were just like, hey, we got this little session set up. You guys want to be a part of the session? And we're like, oh, that sounds awesome. And then what come out of it was something that just kind of set a level of like what the potential of what we do and the way we do it. And
seeing Palmer do that 1 foot, did you see Palmer do the 1 foot like in real life?
Yeah.
Because that was like impossible.
Again, like we'd never seen it before. It never happened. No one took their foot out and did like a, you know, a judo, or not a judo, but like a fast plant, you know, I don't even know what it's called in skateboarding, but, you know, front foot in, back foot off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible, you know, and just Brushy coming out of like a regimented half pipe rider, breaking into more of like just freestyle freedom. You could feel that, like, it's like the chains had been, you know, broken, and he was off the leash, and it was sick to like witness that stuff firsthand. Like, you know, I think Brushy, man, he really, I have mad respect for him. He's a great dude, super talented, kind of got pigeonholed into like a East Coast half pipe rider, but then there was a time where he was like groundbreaking freestylist.
Big time.
Spending so much time at Bear and Summit.
His style, just the shifties, the speed, he was a fast rider, and he was going big at that time too.
Yeah.
And so, I agree with you.
He's just such an underrated stylist as well, because he would just do things that was just like so true to who he was and the way he did it. And man, I wish he was a little bit more prominent just in the community, in the industry. We miss him. Brushy, if you're out there and you hear this, we love you. We always have. I see hits every once in a while that you post, and you bring some stuff up on the forefront. But man, there's always a place. We'd love to have you come back in any kind of, wherever that is, however that is, even if it's just popping up.
There's a VST posse, Vermont something.
Yeah.
That I know he goes on a trip every year. He just doesn't love the limelight now. I think that's his thing.
Well, come up to Canada, man. Yeah, I'd love to see you in Nelson, man. Get on a Bald Face or a Valhalla trip with call Jeff Pensiero. He would love to accommodate that opportunity, and my door is always open. Come on up to Canada and ride some powder with us,
dude. That'd be super, super sick. Yeah. Brush. It's weird because he did he had that pro model, and he was a Burton Pro, and he definitely got some shine. And then even the ride days, he was one of the first guys to sign $1 million contract, from what I understand. $1 million, what, really? But he has just been quiet. Yeah, you'll see his posts every once in a while. I wanted to buy his bike. Did you see that Haro that he has?
Mm-mm.
Had a Haro Freestyle, straight up 84, 85.
Wow.
Exactly the bike I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And he just pulled it out of his basement and was $2,000 or something. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. That going back to that that Blackcomb session with Fall Line, what those guys were doing and where they came from with all their film projects up to that, it was kind of like a kind of a generational change, going from kind of just not really hard boot based big mountain free riding, but more into a freestyle moment, just kind of you got this this turning of the page of what was happening in snowboarding, and they were there to capture that time period that you saw, more jib oriented stuff, but taking smaller freestyle skate influence tricks onto more of a mountain setting. You saw the first snowboard parks, or what was the early birth of snowboard park settings with, straight tables or rails or features incorporated into a half pipe setting. I think that was even before Super Park 1 was a thing. I think it was a season before Super Park became an event.
Yeah.
And that was I think what gave birth to what you saw later on with actual Super Park events. And then we took that and did one up in Tahoe at Squaw. And I think that was, the next year's video project showcased that. But that was another one too, where I'd never seen features set up in a row in a park setting before, where you had boxes and rails and quarter pipes and hips and just features that were made specifically for us.
So
we weren't
sick.
just borrowing from what the ski area had, which was natural terrain.
Right.
And we became masters at tapping into natural terrain to utilize it to our benefit on a snowboard, as if it was a natural skate park. Baker's a great spot for that.
Oh, dude, totally.
Mount Baker is the world's best natural skate park. And so blessed to have the opportunity to grow up in the Northwest and have that resource to tap into. Man, I can't say enough about the Howitt family, Gwen and Duncan and Amy, they've just nurtured our community and what we do on a snowboard in such an awesome way. Thank you guys for doing what you've done all these decades and continuing to support us as a community and as an industry. Mount Baker's fucking amazing. Love it.
Yeah, that's really an era too, is that in resort permissioned riding. Like there are a ton of videos that have a Baker segment. Driving out here kind of reminds me of the Baker Road down from Canada through Sumas. Like it has a similar vibe of like, you know, the farm flats before that steep mountain road where we've all seen people's cars 100 feet down off the side of that thing. But riding in resort, Baker never really had to do much of a park. I mean, they do a park. They do fine with it, but
it just snowed so much they couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
They would build features and then it would dump 100 inches on top of it. And it's like, how do you shovel out your features every week if it's continuing to hammer and dump and but they set up a little thing now, but they didn't really need it. It was such a natural setting for a natural park, skate park features that they just allowed those features to develop. And they didn't get rid of them. If a jump got set up, they wouldn't plow it, or, you know, like the canyon used to be our snowboard park.
Totally.
You know, the way that the hemispheres would slough down into the canyon and build those big triangular hip jumps, like springtime in the canyon, rivals any snowboard park setup I've ever been to in my life around the world, even to this day.
I love it. Yeah, like I've said off mic a bunch of times, on mic a bunch of times, in those early 90s, we followed you down the canyon. You were just riding solo, and you were just hitting those hits in a way that, you know, I had always kind of aspired to be like a pro snowboarder guy, you know, like I'd gotten those shop sponsor kind of things. But then seeing you ride, I was like, okay, that's what a pro is. That guy is going bigger, riding faster. It was marginal conditions, you know, it was kind of icy, but you just had it dialed and you were riding it in a way that made it look super fun and super easy. And it was neither of those things. It was dope.
Well, you could hit each of those jumps singularly, or it was set up to where you could gap them. Mm-hmm. And it was all about takeoffs and transitions and like always dreaming of doing that on a skateboard. But then maybe riding moto and dirt bikes too, where your size scale of what you could access with throttle and speed on a motorcycle and gap stuff, you could do that on a snowboard just if you knew how to take the rev limiter off and just trust your speed, trajectory, and the setup in the canyon where you could pull that off. More often than not, you could gap a lot of those big jumps and make those single jumps into like one big gap jump.
You could. Like if you're riding with like even a Roach or Noah come down to, are they, I could imagine a Hawken is definitely picking up on your lines, but like even like a world-class snowboarder coming to Baker, they're going to be out of their element for the first couple of days, maybe just hitting those singles, right? I would imagine.
I've heard stories of MacDog and Roach and Noah, I think, and maybe AV were up at Baker and they were setting up on a single jump in the canyon, and I was just free riding. I wasn't connected to their project at all, and they were hitting this single line. And I've heard from somebody that I came in and just kind of blazed through in front of them and hit what they were hitting, but gapped over what they were filming on. They were setting up this shot on like a regular hip, and it was sick. And then I came and like blasted massively from this transfer, and they were just like, who the fuck is that? You know, like who was that?
Amazing.
And then later on that afternoon in the parking lot, I think MacDog came up and made the introduction and said, hey, you know, like if you ever make it down to Tahoe, or if I ever make it back up here, would you like to get together and film? And I think that's where the early maybe Hard, the Hungry, and the Homeless, or I don't know if I can't remember if I ever had anything in Pocahontas. I don't think I ever did, but I think the next project after Pocahontas was Hard, the Hungry, and the Homeless. And in Pocahontas, you can see those sessions of Roach and Salaz.
I just saw them yesterday at Wired, and I was watching going, oh, that's a canyon. Because they kind of keep, they move from location to location.
Yeah.
And there's a couple Baker locations in a row. And it's first, it comes Roach, then Noah, and I'm like looking at that going, that's not
a canyon. Yeah.
That's
it showcases
it's early.
that,
Early. Pocahontas. Yeah.
But without, like I probably I didn't like say, hey, can I hit this jump while you guys are filming with the opportunity that I might get a shot. Like I didn't care about fucking shots. I was just like, fuck, I want to ride.
Didn't even know.
Fast.
Right.
And really, I mean, riding fast and hitting shit as big as possible came with like the crew that I grew up riding with, like friends from high school. I had a group of guys, they're Dylan and Apostolos and a guy named Coulter, all amazing riders that could have easily gone on and pursued careers in snowboarding, but just never, didn't really see that, didn't really want it, didn't really need it. And but those guys rode so fast and hit everything like we would be on each other's tip and tails.
Love that.
Where two people would be in the air at the same time off of the jump because we were hitting stuff right on each other's tails with the confidence knowing that we were going to hit it as fast as humanly possible and people were going to land. Like you had trust and faith in the people that you're riding with, that they weren't going to eat shit in front of you and cause a massive pile-up wreck and endanger our livelihood with that. So it just become like, and then watching like Bass and Loeb up at Baker, they kind of had that same riding philosophy. Craig and Dano and Fulton and Carter Turk, they were kind of branched off into their own thing, and they would do things within their own crew but they would ride more individually, but race each other to those lines and spots that if it was a powder day and there was a sick line, there was first chair that I got up on, there was someone had already hit it.
Right.
And then I find out later that Craig and really Carter were battling for who could get that first crack off that turn on top of the waterfall on chair one at the chute at Baker.
Yeah.
I'd always be on like, my first chair is like, 50, 100 chairs in or whatever.
Sure.
Because I'm not, it was just a Grom and my access was limited. But by the time I got up that chair one chute, there was always a turn on this little diving board finger, massive exposure. It's like 40 feet to flat over the waterfall, but there's this one turn flank that would always be hit. And I'd just be like, who the fuck who does that?
Yeah. Sick.
And then I found out that it was Dano, Craig, and Carter would race to those shots, but they would always push each other in ways to, do their own thing. And then, the other Baker crews with like Worm, Bass, just there's so many of those guys up there that they just rode as fast as possible, and tried to push each other riding. They would strap in on the chair. They wouldn't even wait for each other when they got to the top of the chairlift. They would strap in before they got off so they could get it on right out of the gates, so they could drop in off that chair and just be blasting whatever it was underneath them. And like we learned that, we're like, okay, that's just how you do it. You ride, you don't even wait for your friends. And if your friends aren't fast enough to be on your ass, well then they're left in the dust.
They're in another crew.
So
they're riding by themselves.
So that kind of like riding style, we took, we would travel and do Northwest Series contests and see other crews and how, rode with other crews on the peripheral, but then we would take it back to our own Snoqualmie Pass or Crystal and just like focus on what we were doing. And what came out of that was how I developed who I was and what I did when I rode a snowboard.
So sick.
Those early days, like that's like, it just didn't come out of thin air.
Right. Here's a Blaze Rosenthal theory. He thinks, and I think he's convinced me, that the methods were the best with posi. That once we went to duck stance, it was a little more work to get, or it just never went to where it was when it was posi. Like that those early methods, you can kick them out differently. That's his guess.
Those early 90s days was the time of baseless bindings.
Mm-hmm.
So baseless bindings always had a super wide space that your foot kind of floated in.
It's true.
So you could adjust your stance, almost micro adjustments within your baseless binding. And I remember tracking towards a jump with a stance one way and then switching it before I went off the lip to be able to twist, contort, poke, stretch, whatever it was. It gave me latitude where it wasn't confined to a certain, either a positive or a negative stance. I might track it negative, but then when I went off the lip, it probably went more neutral or even, positive.
Sure.
As I was on the lip kicking out.
I forgot about those.
Front three method,
the first bent metal bindings were all baseless.
Yeah.
The very first ones.
Yeah.
And they had the grooves, so they there was all sorts of movement going on in those bindings the first couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Like wide, and if they loosened up, then all of a sudden your bindings are shifting a couple of degrees one way or the other.
I think the story on bent metal is that someone took apart like a stop sign, and the pole part of the stop sign was like the L stock with all those different holes in there.
Yeah.
And cut that and turn that into what was mounted to the base and made a heel cup and a high back in it.
Amazing.
And that's where bent metal was born, was just, repurposing utilitarian street signs.
That's awesome. Yeah, a throwback to like stealing plywood off of billboards and building ramps. Not that far from where the billboards were a lot of times.
Yeah, or a construction site.
Construction site would, yeah.
A construction site with their billboard saying, this site is under construction by so-and-so construction. That was like the platform of the vert ramp, and then all the 2x4s that came off the job site was the framework. And then the only thing really, the plywood was usually free, but the only thing you actually had to spring for was the masonite at the end.
Yeah.
And that's if your shit was tight.
Yeah, that's
like if you got the money together to have masonite on a ramp, then it was like, you're fucking doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was mature. That was when ramps were, most of the ramps I grew up riding didn't even have like angled ply. Like there was, after a couple of weeks, you've got, worn away seams and shredded wood everywhere. And if you went down on it hard, you could get some pretty bad
slivers were a real thing. Like if you fucking with a plywood that became delaminated, and like I remember many times skateboarders incurring injuries of massive slivers where you're riding a 10-inch fucking spike of wood out of your kneecap or your shin or your ass, like it's no joke. But.
It's true. You touch on a point there, like to be a skateboarder or snowboarder in the late 80s, early 90s, you're not seeing a lot of jocks. You're not seeing a lot of people that are like getting coached or are on a team in a professional kind of way. It sounded like the Burton guys got at that first, right? Like Donner Summit and having a coach, Jerry Masterpool, like,
yeah.
But other than that, really, and so it's flipped 100%. Like 90% of the kids, I can't say 90% of the kids. There's lots of independents still. But if you're a Red Bull professional snowboarder right now, you've got a coach, you've got a training facility, you've got a rehab facility for when you get injured.
Comes with a full support system.
Yeah. And it's needed now because you're not doubling up in the canyon. You're riding airbags and shit.
I see an exception to that, and that's Cannon Cummins.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah. Fucking amazing pedigree, amazing rider.
Yeah.
skate, surf, snow, encapsulates everything awesome about what we've always done, with a real sense of just like living it, breathing it, and being it, and being of the community, for the community. He's a Red Bull rider, but he's a true Northwest, born and bred badass.
Yeah.
And I see him and like, Jaden and those guys, Chomlak, just fucking crushing it and doing it so right. And gives me such hope for the future of snowboarding and where it's going. And like, I love to see that. I don't see it enough, but when I do, I'm just like, right on. Those guys are doing it right. And I've known his dad, Temple, for as long as I've been snowboarding.
Yeah.
Temple and I were 14, 15 years old, competing in the same, junior division on the Northwest Series.
Yeah.
And riding for Northwest Snowboards, which is the, Matt and Temple's and Joe and Cheryl's shop in Tacoma. Man, we've grown up together.
That's sick. And now their kid
for so long, like 35 years, and then seeing Cannon and watching him skate and develop as a skateboarder, and it's always kind of like been brought up in the community with his dad and his mom. Barrett's amazing, Temple's an amazing person, human, skateboarder, surfer, snowboarder, just brought up living it, and seeing their parents have such a good time with it that it was a natural progression to want to have a good time with it as well. And what you see now with the way Cannon just rides and has this whole program so dialed.
You got to ride with Chris and Ryder Roach too. Have you gotten a chance to ride with Ryder?
I haven't, but I can only imagine. Those guys are so awesome. Roach is an amazing human, so talented in so many different levels. I could only imagine his offspring is just right
I gotta tell you, I think the first time I saw Ryder, I recognized him from his dad's style.
Yeah.
Like roach arms. And his dad and him have a way of riding that it's like you're constantly improving, and it's all with this really specific style, which is super sick. It's there's a handful of people out there that are doing it completely right. I think Estelle Pensiero is killing it.
Yeah.
I think Arthur Longo too, like having taken a step back from competition and getting really creative within and outside resorts. It's so inspiring to see like people who rip riding for themselves. Like it's obvious they're riding for themselves. I think Jake Kuzik's another great example of that. There's a Wozniak who I've already mentioned is it's just Jody. A pleasure to watch.
I've had the opportunity to get involved in snowboarding at a really early age and did it with humble means and humble beginnings. And when I had the chance to put myself out there in a way that maybe I could get some sponsorship help, and having like the early days of riding for like Wave Rave when it was like Colorado Wave Rave and getting, Noah Road Wave Rave. And then I got a pair of pants that were kind of like the ones Noah was just like, oh my God, like this is happening, I'm doing it. And then to get a call from Joel Gomez with Sessions, man, Joel is such an amazing human, and he's given me so much opportunity, and really one of the first persons in the industry to even offer financial help that goes along with not only the product. Like he didn't just send me a box and go, some stickers and go, he was like, hey, we want you to be on Sessions and we have $500 a month for you. And at the time I was essentially still in high school or on almost getting ready to graduate, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You are offering to pay me $500 a month to snowboard? That's like, you're blowing my mind right now. And not really having like a vocation or a job or anything like that. Like snowboarding was a passion, but I didn't think I could make a living or have a lifestyle doing it until someone offered it, and it was Joel Gomez with Sessions. And then like, man, my first car that I bought was from that first Sessions check.
Sick.
I bought a $500 1971 Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh,
and
awesome.
I was like, that it provided freedom, like having a car when you're 16, 17 years old.
It's a
amazing.
big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big fucking deal.
Now, I mean, I'm thinking like how cool it would be, and I know I'm not there yet, but starting a company now, one of my dreams and goals is to get enough going with 1910 that I can then find Groms that rip, that maybe don't have a lot of opportunity, but maybe help support or nurture their careers and lifestyles by supporting them with either product or financial support if it gets to that point. Like, that would be fulfilling to me as a full circle dream that I aspire to. It's what kind of motivates me to want to have what we do get to a certain level, because then I could then turn around and share it and nurture the culture and the lifestyle of the next generation of riders that maybe come from a place that I came from when I was their age, or maybe they don't have parents, or they don't have a snowboard coach or a team, or they're just doing it because they really love it. So everything about it is truth, and kind of that's how I feel I came from. And to get a chance to have that come full circle and to support kids into the future with helping them facilitate dreams and becoming supporting something that they love and loving what they do and having support in that whole endeavor, it'd be huge for me to get to that point. It's something that I really aspire to want to set as a goal as a company, like not personal gain or like, fuck, I don't really need that, but how much it would mean to me if I was able to put that back into what has given me so much.
Fuck
would be awesome and amazing.
You're while you were saying that, I'm thinking Doug Palladini and how proud of the choice to take you and Bass out of all the people out there to Europe or something like that first trip. Like, he really wanted to just like blow your guys' minds. Like, where would you go? I don't know. How do you feel about going with Bud Fawcett to fucking... Where did you guys wind up? You went to the Louvre in Paris or something, didn't you?
We were down in San Diego for the ASR trade show one summer in like August or September, and I was walking down the halls of the trade show with Doug, and Doug was just kind of wrapping out and seeing what I was up to, what I've been doing, how my season was going, and kind of downloaded all the information of his questions, and then he was just like sprung it on me, like, how do you feel if you could go anywhere in the world to snowboard, where would that be? And fuck, at the time, like, I didn't even know what those options were.
Sure.
I didn't know there was a Chile. I didn't know there was a New Zealand. I didn't know there was a Japan. I didn't know that there was like, all I had seen was maybe some of the early Fall Line films where they went to like Chamonix or Val d'Isère, or like there was some like they touched on, and maybe early on with, because before snowboarding and before snowboard films, when I was just beginning to snowboard, I was watching a lot of ski films because it was just snow based.
Totally.
And it was Greg Stump, and it was the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it was the Maltese Flamingo and Time Waits for Snowman, and like so, and all those film projects with ski based with Greg Stump as producer, they always went to Europe. Yeah. And they always had a Europe section in there because it was always like the French Alps or the Swiss Alps or the Italian Dolomites, and they captured the best of that essence of European, the history of where snow sports came from with skiing specifically. But so when Doug asked me that question, the only thing I could think of outside of like North America that, I lived in the Northwest. We had kind of the best of the best as far as the snow and the terrain and shit. And I was just thinking, like, where do you go? Where do you go from here? Like, Tahoe is kind of, Tahoe. Colorado's good, but it's kind of flat, and Utah's good, but the snow's too dry. I'm used to more wet content, like,
Totally.
And
And
so,
you already knew all this. You could drive to all these places.
It was all attainable,
Yeah.
I there was accessibility,
Yeah.
and it just seemed like Europe was such an inaccessible foreign land
So far.
that had all the history, that had a familiar visual sense of the experience ingrained in my head from these early ski films
Totally.
and early maybe snowboard films, that when he asked that question, the only answer I could come up with was like Europe, like France, like wherever that is. I don't even know what that is. Like, I'm just saying these words, but I don't know what that entails because I've never traveled outside of, North America, really the West Coast. I hadn't even been probably east of Colorado at that point in time. And so when he was like, okay. And then he came back and was like, how does it sound if we put a trip with you and Jason Bastrich together to go to France? And I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're blowing my brain out my ear right now. You know? Awesome. Like, fuck yeah, let's. And he's like, you got to get a passport. You got to get your shit together. But we got a trip booked and planned. And I think it was 91,
And Bud went with you too,
and
right?
it was Bud was shooting.
Had you ever shot with Bud before?
I hadn't, because kind of the time that I started riding and actually doing contests and getting out there, it was in his recovery period of his accident that left him, really in a state where he needed to do a lot of like rehab and rehabilitation to get the function of what his art form and his craft was back together, and find a way that he could do it in a way that was still effective and gave him what he needed to get out of it.
Totally.
So this was the first trip that he had taken.
That was his first post-accident trip. Wow. And he had to learn to shoot with the other hand.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And but I mean, what an amazing opportunity. What a cool chance. Because I'd grown up with like that name on the bottom of every iconic photo that I've ever seen on any publication.
Totally.
ISM, Trans World Snowboard, whatever it was. The best of the best always had Bud Fawcett as a photographer. He's iconic. He's a legend. Before even that, before even all that, he was there in the beginning. Tom Shea is another guy that kind of like,
hell yeah.
And I mean, there's a couple that I'm kind of.
John Foster
He was an amazing photographer that I've had some of my most iconic shots in my historical sessions were documented by Foster.
That cover shot of Strin is a Foster shot, right?
Yeah.
And Brushy was at that.
Brushy was there too. It was like that. I mean, I've told the story a million times, but that trip was like such an anomaly. Just, it wasn't supposed to happen. We had Brad Gerlach and Brock Little, two surfers from Hawaii that hadn't even really snowboarded before, and trying to get those guys up on Strin and
Hawkins'
do something.
car going off the road, the whole thing.
That whole drive up there was kind of an interesting portion of the whole experience, but then us trying to find something to ride there, not really finding anything, and then on the way back to the car, seeing that gap and just going like, okay, this is it. Now we have the opportunity to session something. And then it was funny how like it kind of separated the crew, like
I could see that,
like Rado, Peter, Hawken, myself. But Brushy was kind of like, you guys might be doing this one on your own. Like, I don't even know. Like, I think he might have took a sideline and enjoyed the show.
I think he's talked about it. I think he's talked about how he just was like,
where it was just like, I'm not there. It was like, finding the nerve and the internal confidence in your ability to like see past the road and just see a takeoff and a landing, because that's kind of was my mentality. It was just like, okay, we jumped that far. Any given day on the hill, just fill it in mentally, fill that fucking gap in with snow, and you got yourself a killer setup. So just don't fucking blow it off the takeoff.
And now you've got huge names like Terrier. I love that Ray Lam was there too. That guy's amazing. And you hitting that switch.
Pete.
Oh yeah, Peter Lynn.
Man.
You hitting that switch is like a huge flex at that time. Huge
Well,
flex.
it was like I knew that if I went off switch and did a cab 5, my back would be to the consequence 80% of the jump.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was more of like, it wasn't so much like, hey, I got this gnarly crew, I'm not just going to hit a fucking straight air. It was more like, if I hit a straight air, I'm going to be looking at that fucking road gap the whole time, and I'm going to be scared. It'll freak me out.
I love that you
But
turn
if
your
I
back
went
to
in
it.
and hooked my toes and put my back to it, and then when I opened up, I'd have cleared it. It was just more of like just a survival instinct of like what needed to happen to get from point A to point B.
Amazing.
And then after we figured out that the speed was right, the jump was right, the landing was good, then the session progressed significantly.
Yeah, Ray
that.
he backflipped that one.
I think
that
maybe
was
a
in something.
front flip.
Front flip. Yeah, he was doing front flips at that time. That's
Indie
right.
grab or something.
That's
fucking
right.
Like
Yeah,
mental stuff went down.
So
and
crazy.
like that.
It's legendary.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure, I know from my own photo history, I'm taking pictures of stuff. Sometimes you just get a lucky shot. You're out, it's the thing you're doing is not that big a deal, but the lighting's right, the backdrop's perfect, the angle's awesome, and the photographer gets something amazing. But that Strin photo is like, it captured something important that was happening at that time. A switch 5 off that thing was the edge of the tip of the spear of the progression at the time.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a great shot.
I remember with that session, we weren't conscious of where anybody was for the media. We were so focused on like
between
we didn't know like,
yeah.
okay, someone's over here and like John's gonna be over here. So we were just like, we were so focused on the task at hand with the small crew that we had to do it with. Of just like, okay, how are we gonna do it, and like, what are you gonna do individually? And like, we didn't talk about that, but we just
nobody's
did it.
asking you what you're gonna do.
And then what came out of that, as far as the way that the photographers and cinematographers were able to capture those moments, they had their own art to do.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own art to do.
Yeah,
and we were focused on doing that artwork and like, okay, that's what we need to do. And those guys were like, okay, if they're doing that, where are we going to place to capture this moment and tell the story as well as we could? That was kind of a different trip. The Europe trip with Bud and with Artie from Fall Line and Vianney Tissot, the French photographer.
Sick.
He's another guy that was like, as far as like European photographers, he was the guy.
He was the main dude. So we had
like Bud and Vianney, and that meeting of the minds where they could kind of nerd out on their photography sense and do all their shit.
Yeah, there's some artsy photos in there too.
Yeah, and we did
rad.
Like not only the traveling aspect of getting from point A to point B, taking a flight over to Europe when people could still smoke on an airplane, and having my ticket not be definitely wasn't in any comfort class. Or not even no business class. Right. I was back of the bus. Yeah. Cheapest fucking ticket someone could get together and give to me. And I remember sitting in the back of this airplane, like, after row 15 to 30, it was all smoking.
Unreal.
And I was probably 27, right in the middle of that smoking section.
Sure.
And at the time, didn't smoke and was just, it was a mission just to get on that 10-hour flight from wherever it was to wherever we landed. I think Charles de Gaulle in Paris. And then I don't know if we went to like Geneva first, and then from Geneva went into the Alps and did that thing. It's been so long ago. It's hard for me to place the exact timeline of where our itinerary went, but I think we went to the Alps first and did like Verbier, amazing trip to Verbier from Geneva. I think we flew into Geneva, went to Verbier, then Verbier we went into Val d'Argentine and spent some time in the Chamonix Valley over in France. And then we went down to Grenoble and took a train from there, and it was my first time on a high-speed bullet train. the TGV.
Sick.
So we took a TGV from, outside of Chamonix down out of the Alps, got on a train, and then just shot to Paris, and then finished the trip with like 3 days in Paris.
Oh, sick.
And the culture of, Parisian culture, rich in art history. We took the time to go to the Louvre and Montmartre, and like, dude, we did everything as much as we could just to experience France and European culture. And coming from the Northwest and be kind of these like backwoods blue collar farm kids turn on to international culture like that was a huge opportunity. I mean, Doug Palladini, man, just kind of ignited what was possible for me in the world. Like, took me out of like a local stage and put me on this world stage, and was like, this is all possible. You can do this. You can do this on your own. And it gave me the confidence to then be able to travel internationally, where we had, what's the beauty of snowboarding in the community is like, we have people around the world that are into doing the same things and loving, sharing these passions, that you can go anywhere in the world now and find a like-minded individual that would love to be able to show you the best of where they live.
It's unbelievable.
And then you could reciprocate that if you make a contact and they live, over in Europe. And then when they get here, they call you and go, hey, man, I'm,
it's still
so-and-so.
now. It still exists.
Like that is, there's something special about our community that allows us to travel anywhere in the world, find a homie, find a brother or a sister that you can connect with, that you can share the best of where they come from and have the best time in the world. And it's easy.
It's nuts.
It's possible.
So after that first trip, for the next 10 years of your life, you're kind of on the road all winter. Did you travel all winter and then like kind of plant yourself in Washington for the summers, or?
No, because I was such a, I would just live out of my backpack for probably 9-10 months out of the year. I would come home and I would do a couple of things weeks at a time, and kind of like, see the family, see friends. But then, we would go down to California and hang out with the Volcom crew, or go to Santa Cruz and hang out with the Sessions guys when I was in, and like maybe go surf in Santa Cruz, or maybe go hang out down in Newport or Costa Mesa or Laguna Beach and warm your bones. You existed in a winter environment for X amount of months out of the year. This was a time to like go someplace completely disconnected from that landscape and get in some warm water, sit in the sun, get some sun on your face, and like, or do a trip to Cabo with the Volcom guys, or go to Hawaii. I had friends over in Hawaii, and I started, connecting with, after Hurricane and Niki, some friends from Washington kind of moved over there that were contractors during construction, and connected with the rebuilding of the island of Kauai.
Yeah.
So they kind of made a foundation over there from the Northwest that they're like, hey, if you ever get a chance, come on over and spend some time on Kauai. So, I think it was 94 that the hurricane was over there. So 95, 96, 97. I would always kind of find myself on the tour schedule. We would go over to Japan in April for spring. Our distributor, Advanced Marketing, would have like a Advanced Cup. It was kind of an event that would bring the LibTech team over there. You'd go over there, and when you went over there, you'd come out of there. They would pay you for your, they'd give you $1,000 or something just for showing up.
Wow.
Which Japan is amazing for that opportunity. And like, we were selling a shitload of boards over there.
Hell yeah.
So they had some budgets to be able to get the whole team over there, make it worth their while, which was like funny to say, because just the chance to travel to Japan is like in itself worth your while.
Yeah.
If you could do it with like, even if it's at a discount, you're stoked.
Yeah, my buddy Gentles reached out just the other day going, okay, we're at that stage in life where a big trip a year, we need to like put that on the books. Where do we want to start thinking about going? And I think we're both like Japan. It sounds like Japan because we haven't been. And there's so much over there to do, and it's not completely blown out price-wise, development-wise, all that stuff. There's also Alaska. God.
I can't tell you what a good idea, how much of a good idea that would be. If you haven't gone to Japan, I recommend anybody who has the means or the capabilities to at least experience once in life. It's such an incredible destination that combines like technology of the future with hundreds of years of cultural history and beliefs, and you could go into Tokyo and just traveling over there is so easy. You know, like I went in there after like in the early days of the late 80s, early 90s, there was zero infrastructure. No one spoke English. It was super tough. And then after like the Nagano Olympics or something, like I don't know what dates that was, but it maybe like 94 or 98.
I think 98 was
98.
the Nagano one. Yeah.
So after 98, there was all this infrastructure was in place. All the signs were in English, or at least gave you an option.
Right.
And then you could like figure it out. Like,
yeah.
But before you needed a translator, you needed like a liaison, you needed like someone to transport you.
Yeah.
Like, but then after 98, you could go over there and like you could get a airport shuttle to, you know, either a bus or a train from Narita to main station Tokyo, and then get off the main station Tokyo. And if you wanted to lay up for a night, super easy. But if not, if you wanted just to transfer into a bullet train that shot you up into Nagano or any of the Hakuba Valley stuff, it's a 12-hour bus ride, but it's like 2.5, 3 hours on a bullet train.
Oh shit.
So it's like, man,
amazing.
It just, the accessibility is so easy, and like the snow is amazing. The culture is amazing. I can't say enough about how awesome Japanese culture and Japanese people are, because they're so welcoming and they're so giving, and they want to share, and they admire and support other cultures in a way that really allows you to feel really comfortable. There's never any negativity. You could have your snowboard bag on top of your car in downtown Tokyo with your car unlocked and not trip at all.
That's
like
sick.
There's no, there's no pitfalls of travel that you get into in other places in the world that you find, elsewhere, where Japan is like, Tokyo is such a cool city. There's so many different districts. You can get on the local subway, and each stop is a different district and a different, shopping or electronics or art, or, just like
cool.
Tourism is part of their whole culture in the city. It's really cool. And then the snowboarding is amazing. The amount of snow, it's always been where there's almost been too much snow.
Yeah.
That's the only problem about riding over to Japan is that sometimes there's just too much freaking snow.
That's unbelievable.
And what a good problem to have if you're going to have problems over there.
Yeah.
A lot of times it just snowed with like 3-4 feet, and the mountain couldn't sustain that much snowpack.
That's unbelievable.
So it would take days for that to get packed out for you to even get to the lines that you could traverse to.
That you wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to reach out to Mint Tours. Mint Tours, if you're listening, I want to get me and Gentle Brad on some trip to Japan. They seem to do it really well. I think Corey Smith and Blaze and those guys have gone over there with the Mint Tours guys. I know Chad Otterstrom's gotten on it. I want to go with somebody that takes us directly to the goods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the same thing you were just talking about. Meet up with Japanese homies that just know where it's at.
I don't think there is a wrong way to do Japan. Really, I don't think there is even. I don't even think that's part of the equation. I think even if you just stumbled over there, not knowing shit,
sure,
and just got connected point A to point B and made it up there, you could find a crew, find some homies, go to the local snowboard shop, go to the local bar, find a couple locals that, you know, hey, I'm just here not for a long time, but for a good time, and they'd be just like, okay, we got you. This is what you do. This is the way you do it. The local areas on Honshu, which is the main island where Tokyo and stuff is amazing. But then going up to Hokkaido, the North Island, is like a whole different genre, a whole different ball of wax, whole different, like the riding and the train and the, you know, the snowpack, and the culture is a little bit different up there. They're more like, you know, nomadic powder hobos that live out of vans and just camp wherever they can, however they can, because you can get away with that up there more so than, like, you know, a lot of people in Tokyo live in the city, but then just shoot up to the mountains because it's accessible. But up in Hokkaido, I've seen like more like they're like mountain people and country folk.
Sick.
That just do it on a more humble means. But both places, like, man, Sapporo's incredible. Hokkaido, Niseko, all those places on the North Island, sick. I mean, I've been going over to Japan for, 90, 91 was probably my first trip over there. I think 91. And when we went over there, it was like, I was with Matt Cummins and Cersei Wallace and myself as the LibTech team.
Sick.
As the team from the United States. And then it was a contest. And at the contest, it was like the Lamar team was over there. And maybe Tim Wendell, I think he was maybe riding for Nidecker at the time, or Checker Pig.
Checker
Pig.
Yeah, that's 1991
so
exactly.
Yeah, so it was like, you know, Jimmy Scott and the Lamar team during those days, and then it was like, you know, only a couple of the American teams went over there for this contest, but it was like so.
Was Damien there that year? Was that dirty pipe Damien year?
No,
that would have been the year before.
Yeah, it was probably the year before.
Or 2 years before that.
But that contest, that session in the half pipe, it was at the it's called the Super Aerial Contest, 1991 Super Aerial Contest.
Sick.
And it was like first time I ever seen like a straight tabletop jump that was going to be incorporated into the, you know, the dynamic of a snowboard contest, which we were stoked on. Jimmy Scott wasn't so stoked on. And he actually protested the straight jump, saying it was too windy. And there was no wind at all. Like, he just said it was too windy and too sketchy.
Right.
Because he was like half-pipe guy.
A total
and
half-pipe
he was
guy,
lined up to win the half-pipe, but they were going to run a combined...
An overall
straight jump half-pipe contest.
Right.
And the first place prize was a freaking Subaru Legacy, like a brand new Subaru Legacy in 1991. You know, whatever Japanese Subaru was offering, this new mountain vehicle that was amazing. And we were just like, holy shit, we can win a car. You know, like we have the opportunity to win a car. And
Jimmy's like, cut the jump right away.
Well,
I need to win this.
He boycotted it, but then he didn't know if they would, you know, if they would actually do it. So he went around to all the camps and said, hey guys, all these guys that have the opportunity to win the overall, let's get together and we'll write our names down on a list. And then whoever wins from this list, we will share the prize. That if we sell this car, we will share this 15, 20,000, whatever the money was for the price of the car. So like, I think 8 people were on this list. I was on this list.
He got you in that list. You're
and
like,
I was on the list.
Not?
And then he gets gets the straight jump off the overall and ends up winning the half pipe and didn't share any of the money with anybody.
Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy, no.
Yeah.
So he was like, if you guys win, I get some.
Yeah.
If I win,
and if I win, we split it. But he won and he walked and he sold it for like $17,000 and walked with 17 grand.
Man,
and
Jimmy.
I think I got 5th place in the
Yeah,
half pipe.
yeah.
And probably would have had a pretty good, because no one was really hitting straight jumps. And I was really excited to put my best foot forward on this like straight jump new venue for a contest, and like we were stoked. Like I think it was Rankwit and I were just like, fuck yeah, we're gonna crack this thing.
We're
it's
taking
gonna
this
be
one home,
we're like, we have a chance.
Because if you had 5th,
like
and
if you
first,
can get top
win.
5
right.
finish with the first in the straight jump, like boom,
exactly.
you could be an overall contestant. Like man, but Jimmy just
crazy. Jimmy,
we were coming out of there just like, fuck that guy, man.
Yeah, I've always wondered how he got such a bad reputation in it, but he was like, he came from the roller skating contest scene, and he just, the contest thing gets blown out pretty hard, right? Like it ends up getting blown out in snowboarding as well, but not for years and years and years. But Jimmy was like, he knew how to work at those, like 89 through 93, 94. He could still win a contest, against Hawken, who's going 15 times bigger than him. But just the technical, he knew how to talk with the judges. Okay, what do you guys want to see? And then the judges would say, this is our criteria, and he would just ride to the criteria.
Yeah. He would structure his run to that criteria,
Totally.
to where he would check all those boxes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like hitting 5 hits and blasting 3 times as big and doing like really cool stylish stuff. That was, overall impression was like fucking amazing.
Right.
Hawken,
right,
good example of that.
Palmer,
anybody on that. And then you'd see, it was like a mini ramp contest version of Jimmy Scott's run, where he would just be a foot out, but just doing all these like little like
flips, hand plants,
gimmicky things that really didn't. The overall impression was just like, whoa, what the fuck was that? Like it hurt to watch.
Sure,
but
sure.
I don't know.
Craig was in that realm at some point too. Not that it hurt to watch, but that he was playing the game.
Yeah, you have to be a smart strategist to a contest environment,
and
he had
a contract where he could make a shit ton of money if he's winning contests.
But he came with it with like a BMX and skateboarding background. That was like badass. That was all fucking Craig. He's in a totally different category. Like he took a lot of like the right influences and structured it into his half pipe performance that made it like fucking awesome. Like never ever came out of there with like, wow, that was kind of like, you really milked that one, or it's like, fuck no, like he earned that place, and like he had that ability to like, and it was great seeing Palmer and him go toe to toe during those years where they fucking battled it out. Like I think it was so good for the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was so good for the progression of snowboarding to have that too, that dynamic of just like raw angst and like refined technical ability and just like going at it like that. Like I fucking love that.
There's a bit of a bonus or a bit of a leg up from having Baker as your home mountain, or let's just say Washington, right? Because also the pass, you've got tons of great terrain. Like when you ride Baker, you're riding like mini Alaska, but you're also riding mega skate park. Like it just has so much to it. Plus you've got legends, the list of legends that's come out of there is just so many. So
I think there was a generational legacy that started.
That's what I was trying to say.
You know, like for me, before I could really get to know it firsthand, there was legend that came out of it with Craig and Dano and Carter and Jeff Fulton. Like those guys put the foundational bricks in for then guys like Jason Loeb, Jason Bass, Brian Hollenbeck, like Worm, Cersei. Cersei really she's the one that introduced me to that whole next generation crew. and had her place in it with the progression of women's snowboarding. I think she was able to cut her teeth and then go where she went with following those lines around from, you know, like putting her riding ability not on like a, just like a, you know, pigeonholing into like what women can do, but just like riding with the, you know, the best, world's best with Craig and Dano and Jeff and Carter, and then all of her generations with Jason Loeb and Bass and Hollenbeck and those guys. Like, you know, they had their own little like subgenre that fit into the whole Baker dynamic. And but she was the one that kind of brought me in, and like we'd always see those guys on the peripheral doing Northwest Series contests. You know, the Baker crew would come down, or you know, Idaho and you know, Northwest Series kind of brought that, you know, Oregon, Washington, Idaho together. But the guys that really stood out was a lot of times was Bass and Loeb, you know, and they just were fucking punks and ripped and brought this like fresh energy into it where they weren't, you know, because there was guys around here, and like we were kind of like the south of Seattle, and Auburn's kind of like, you know, it's not Bellevue, it's not Redmond, it's not Seattle, and those guys kind of went up to Stevens Pass. But then all the people that were kind of in this, we call it the South King County area, you know, Snoqualmie Pass.
Yeah,
you know, and
the pass was the spot.
And we had Hyack, and we had, you know, Snoqualmie and Alpental were kind of the three areas within that pass area that was kind of our home mountain. And then there was Crystal, but we got so much friction up at Crystal. And that, when we talk about early days of snowboarding, all I can think about is friction.
Friction,
you know?
right.
So much pushback.
Yeah.
Fighting for just a toehold to be able to get any kind of like validation or recognition in the industry. It was such a struggle. Fist fights in the lift lines, like battling with skiers, cat calls from the chairlifts, you know, like shit, just like you battled to get any kind of opportunity. And then you went to Baker, and it's like, oh fuck, like frictionless, welcomed, supported, brought in with open arms. And so I think about those early days before it became like a thing. It's like you really had to work for it. You really had to want it. There was no handouts. No one was like giving you a free ride. It was just kind of pure passion that drove every experience. You know, supporting each other within the community to be able to make it bigger than it was. And you knew that if you did put that energy into that, maybe one day we'd see a return. And you did that without any expectation. And you did that with just your heart driving that path of just really wanting to do it because it filled you up with so much. It was so rewarding to do. And it was like growing up in the Northwest, winters are, you know, it's a period of the year that you just have to deal with, and you can either make it fun or you could just hole yourself up in a dark hole and just put your head underneath a rock until it gets sunny again, or you could figure out how I'm going to go and exist in this environment. And then we've talked about this before with like, fuck, we didn't have money, so we found ways to support getting outerwear or snowboards, and a lot of it was sometimes ill-gotten gains.
Sure,
but it was just like, fuck, we were just opportunists that knew what we needed to do something, and we were going to do whatever it took to be able to facilitate the opportunity to go up and ride the snow that we had in our backyard.
Fucking A. I just want to thank you for kicking open the season, enjoying a couple of Flojoy waters, all the way from Donner to Grass Valley to Vancouver, Canada, back down to Auburn. They're delicious, hey? Like, it's actually fucking solid water right there.
It's great stuff. And I think, like, man, any time you could support someone like Chris Roach in any kind of endeavor that he puts on, either in snowboarding or just in like supporting his community and his lifestyle, and maybe helping him make it a little bit easier to exist in the world, man, like, I'm all for it.
Plus he's connecting with his family. That's the best thing. I think he was talking about how many projects he's been involved in over the years, snowboarding or not, where he's had partnerships, buddies, other people involved. And he's like, I've learned my lesson. This is me. Like, I'm going to do one where I'm relying on myself and I'm bringing my family into it and we're going to do it together. I think that's really sick. And that's really similar to what you guys are doing with 1910. Like you, Scotty Scove, like when you're hanging out, you're fucking hanging out. It's like an excuse to hang out, to have a company that you're doing together. And it's working. It seems like the stuff for this year looks great.
Yeah.
The launch was just a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now.
Yeah, for the next season.
Season.
We just dropped the next season. I think we're just getting into the stores right now for season 2.
Yeah.
Same thing with Roach. Like he's worked for over 30 years, working within the industry, writing for other companies, helping them build and have a future with financial gain attached to it, but only getting a small percentage of those rewards with putting in maximum energy and effort to help those other entities make as much as they could during the time that they had to make it. It's rare that we still have the chance to be able to take on a project or a company or an energy or an effort where we have control over what our output is, and then we have, we're in a position to be in a place to receive the reward of the energy or effort that we put out there. So I hope and look forward to seeing Chris being successful with this endeavor. And I thank everyone that's been able to help support what we've been doing with 1910. And I would love to see it continue, like I said, to get to the point where I can start supporting the community and supporting the next generation of riders in a way that I was supported and helped when I was a Grom. I would love to have that opportunity. And just bring back the snowboard industry into the hands of snowboarders. Like we've seen this whole shift in the industry where people now work for these companies that are owned by people that have no business being a part of snowboarding or the community and reaping 100% of the benefits from that involvement. And it's just nice to bring a little bit of the culture and the lifestyle back into it with providing a good, but then having it stay within the community and tie back into more grassroots involvement with support, wherever that support is or wherever it comes from. I'd love to put together what I experienced with like a Northwest Series contest, and I know that I've kind of
Peter's working on it, I think.
Yeah.
I think Peter said it when I went up the pass last year I think Eric Blem came through. They do a contest series up there, right? Like a bank slalom?
Yeah.
Pac West. What's the guy's name again? I forget. Marcel, yeah, that's right. And it was really well done.
It's fucking awesome.
And it's really fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Peter's taken the forum reins, and he was definitely mirroring what you were just saying.
Yeah.
He wants, like, why can't it be like that? There's no reason that it can't be like that.
Yeah.
Except if we partner with with the mega brands that don't see the incentive of keeping the grassroots going or supporting the grassroots. Because it's a lot of work, actually. It's a lot of work to put together those series and that. But if someone like Marcel is doing such a good job of it, getting involved with the players that are actually, just like we talked about with the Indigenous Life Sports Academy and their new entity that's going on, like being involved with those guys, that you're welcoming more community into the community, right? The younger generation into the community. That's what you have to do.
we would love and jump at the chance to be able to partner and to support stuff that connects with more grassroots involvement to develop, the opportunity for kids to go up and have a venue, to have a contest, or to have an event that kind of supports the local community, because those early stages of that involvement, I still look back now and go, man, those are so important for me and my development and with my early career, and to have relationships that I've made that are now 35 years old, that I met those guys when we were teenagers, and now we've grown up to be and do what we've done and do. It all started back in those early Northwest Series days. Yeah. And, I think Bolcom did it really well with the peanut butter and rail jams for a certain time and period. Were great. That brought, I think, the Seth Hewitt and the Scotty Blums and a lot of those riders together to then, have the opportunity to open themselves up to bigger opportunity. All came from those early Grom days of doing local contest series. Pat Moore is another guy that's fucking doing a really awesome job with this methodology deal. And
super sick.
Love to be able to partner with him and support him and his endeavors, and maybe see him branch out to do more regional events. Just takes a lot of energy, and you have to have good people behind you to help want to spearhead those efforts. And
yeah, as the mountains get conglomerated as well, I've heard lots of people complaining about resorts going away from building parks, resorts going away from supporting the community because it's big business and they're making more money off the parking lot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or they're jacking the prices on a chili bowl or whatever the hell they're doing to maximize profits. They're trying to figure out how do we make passes, everybody buys a season's pass. Well, let's make day tickets $300 a day per person. So $1,200 for a family of four to go for a day. Like, what the fuck?
No one can afford that. No one can afford that anymore. And we had day tickets under $40 up at Snoqualmie Pass as a Grom, and that was a stretch. And there was like a $5 Wednesday that you bought a beef jerky package from Oboy, Alberta, and you brought it up. That's awesome. You could get a $5 night ticket.
Amazing.
So we would go to a gas station and rack a pack of beef jerky.
Yep.
Eat it on the way up, and then get an evening after 5 o'clock, 5 until 10:30 at night. We'd have 5 hours of shredding for $5.
That's amazing.
Like, we could do that.
Yeah.
That was attainable for a teenager that borrowed their mom's car and barely had enough to put gas in the tank to make it an hour drive back and forth. Like,
the scarcity thing.
You can do it.
The scarcity thing was a hallmark of our generation. You wanted the brushy board with the trout on it, but fuck, there's no secondary market for those. If a guy got one of those, it was $1,200 Canadian dollars. He's hanging on to it. Mm-hmm. Like, it was scarcity. You'd see somebody and they'd have like the boots that you saw in the magazine. You're like, fuck, I want those boots. But you'd see like one guy had them. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like it is now where you can go and watch a 3-hour YouTube video on what the best gear is and then there's no scarcity. It's like, oh, now you're going to shop and see where the best price is. Before it was just like, oh shit, a Lamar trick stick. Like, I got to somehow come up with the money to get this one opportunity before my family takes me to some other town. We're just passing through and there's like, it just happens to be one here. Oh my God. That just doesn't exist now. And the scarcity of, I guess it does, in scarcity of like POW days or uncrowded, sunny POW days, that doesn't even exist anymore. That's a scarcity.
Yeah.
You gotta get a sled, split board, or snowshoes to
it just pushes people out into places where they can attain it. If it's hiking or split boarding or stuff, like if you don't want to buy a ticket or a pass, there's other ways to do it. So it pushes people out on their peripheral, but that comes with this whole dynamic too. But I still think there's a group of kids that are finding ways to.
Oh, you see them, and it's so rad to see them.
Tickets.
Yeah,
hike
sure.
up,
Yeah,
ride the back chairs.
Totally.
Like, that. I love that shit.
Yeah, me
because it's
too.
like so dear to my heart. Like that's how we did it.
Yeah,
I didn't come from means. I didn't have I didn't have my mom and dad like supporting me financially on any level until I could do it myself. But we were just really creative and opportunists.
out of necessity. It was like a necessity.
To,
yeah, of course.
making it happen.
Yeah.
We figured out ways. We just wanted it that bad. It was that important to us. We were going to risk sometimes life or limb, right up in the back of Snoqualmie Pass in the back of a 68 El Camino with like a half quart of firewood and back to retraction.
Oh, wow.
And like wrapped up in a North Face sleeping bag. And I mean, that was like, my brother's friend rode us up one day, and that's how I got up to Snoqualmie. It was
in a sleeping bag.
In a sleeping bag
I
in the
love
back
it.
of an El Camino that had like a built 350 in there with like street slicks. Had
Wow.
no business being a.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
It
trip to make.
And it's all part of the whatever it took.
I can remember the Baker Road just being like, we'd gone off at one time, and I just, for years after, I was white knuckling. I actually, for years after, I would park just past the snow removal cabin and just pull over to the side of the road and hitchhike up. Because people were going
like
up that
Heather
knew
Meadows
how to
parking lot at the base right there.
Exactly. Yeah, not even from Heather Meadows, from the snow line, wherever it snowed to.
Yeah.
I would just pull over. Okay, now there's snow, like, and then you get a ride right away, because there's just always people that are so nice down there. But yeah, it was necessity. You were just doing what you could do. And if you got that like cherry gig where somebody's going to pay for you to go to Montana for the Trans World Industry Summit or something, it was just mind blowing, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's people like me from all over the world that are doing this. All right, there, we just lost that one. Charge the battery. All right, Jamie, thank you so much for having me down to your home.
Oh,
it's
my pleasure, Eric. Thank you so much.
Awesome to talk to you all the time.
Love what you do with FNRad. I've been a huge fan from the beginning.
Dude, you're the best.
Look forward to seeing everything that comes out in the future. Relish the opportunity and a chance to sit down and rap out. I know even when we call each other on the phone, it's a minimum hour every time, because it's so fun to just sit down and have a conversation with you. So
yeah,
thank you for doing what you do the way you do it. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, anytime.
Let's
You're
get
always
together
welcome.
this year. Let's take some laps. Let's make that happen. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Killer.
Yeah, and thank you again for being a huge supporter of what we're doing with 1910.
I love it. I just love it.
Great to have this relationship, and man, love to develop it more as the time goes on.
Let's get a 1910 Japan trip going.
That would be amazing.
FNRad listeners, if you're independently wealthy and you want to help fund a Japan trip, reach out anytime, and we'll pay to bring Jamie and put together a couple of days, a week trip to ride POW in Japan.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, if this thing ever starts getting off the ground and we're able to afford anything, let alone just continue as a company.
Yeah, dude.
Let's put together a bald-faced cat one of these days.
A bald-faced cat.
Yeah.
That's it. There's where there's scarcity. Yeah, bald-faced cat.
Yeah. Or, there's ways. I mean, Jeff puts together an incredible opportunity experience up there, but
it's incredible, yeah.
There's also, Ken Achenbach's got a program around Whistler.
We got Al Clark down in Trout Lake.
Al Clark and Trout Lake boys.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of opportunity, if you're out there and have a spot that don't mind a couple of old cats going up there and like stinking up the place. Reach out and let us know. We'll be we're ready and willing.
Hell yeah. Awesome, brother. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, Eric, no problem, brother.
FNRad shoutouts to Jamie, Deanie, and Thalo. It was so rad to connect with you guys, and thank you, Deanie, for making a killer chili dinner. It was super rad to meet Jamie's parents, and they were so cool and down to earth. What an honor. Thank you again to the Patreon members. You're the lifeblood of the show, and thank you for listening to the end. Be sure to come back next week for more FNRad snowboarding presented by Flojoy Water and brought to you by FNRad Productions.